So let's make a Stilo helmet to a Peltor Intercom adapter. Looks like this. Some of the tools you're going to need along the way. The connectors, of course. So these are TP101 with the back shells with them. 47K resistor. This is for later on, but this is like an adhesive for a heat shrink. I use a bit of Kapton tape to insulate some of the connector parts. Heat shrink tubing. These are colorful, but you can get just black. This red one's a bit thicker. This has got like a glue inside of it. I like using this quite a bit. It really binds the cable nice and strong. And I also put a clear cover over top of a label, just nice finish to it. And of course, some wire. Now, this wire that I use is microphone cable, or you can get it at guitar places and that sort of stuff. It's a shielded 4-conductor cable. It's really nice and supple. It can take a bit of strain. It's pretty tough stuff. Lately I've been getting like a blue sheath to it, but you can get different colors, black and that sort of thing. And as you can see from this cable, I make them about 1 foot long. I found that's a good length for the connector. And then for the heat shrink itself, for the size, heat shrink is you usually get 2 dimensions. You get the unshrunk dimension plus what it'll go down to. I mean, these back shell connectors themselves, I think they're 1/2 inch. Let's see. Yeah, they're 1/2 inch. So when you're getting heat shrink tubing, just get something that's going to fit over this. Now, you want it to be able to go small enough to go around the cable that you're using. My cable is just under 1/4 inch in diameter, so that it seals nice and tight. Soldering iron and some solder. A 3rd hand, so like something like this, or even the typical alligator clamp types is just fine. Something to make your life a little bit easier. And a meter when it's all said and done, so you can plumb out the wiring and make sure that you don't have any shorts and the wires are going where you want them to go. Of course, a piece of paper and your wiring diagram. So I'll get set up where I can show you the procedure that I do for making the connectors. So we'll do the Stilo connector end first. I misspoke at the beginning. This is it's a 47 ohm resistor, and pin number 1, the tip here, it's got a hole in the shaft. I just bend the resistor so that it'll fit within the back shell body and not short out to another pin. So just roughly get it in place for now, and be a little bit fiddly till you get that first solder done. So we'll do that. So that's trimmed off. The resistor itself fits down in the body here, and then we'll solder one of the leads to this tab. So previously you saw I put some Kapton tape. So this is a shielded connector. There's no real power, very, very low voltage that goes through this. So it's not like this will cause any interference in the system. And the shielding gives us some additional protection on the wire. But because this strain relief is connected to pin number 1, if you had the shielding strands touch this the strain relief, when we get to the other end of the connector, we could have a circuit that goes through, which we want to avoid. So I just use a little bit of Kapton tape. You could use some other non-conductive tape if you'd like, of course. And the wire that I'm using is just 2 blue and 2 white. So we'll ohm this out afterwards to figure out which pin is which, but it's not important right now as to which one goes to where. So so this strain relief here, technically we could effectively using string, we can get a bit of bite on this strain relief to the cord itself. But this back shell, when it's all the way up and it threads on, it'll crush or it'll crimp this connector down nice and flat and grabs onto this cable quite well. And then with the heat shrink and the glue that I use, the mechanical bond isn't really on the strain relief, it's actually on the heat shrink over top of the back shell, and it's pretty strong. I haven't had any fail in that way. And let's face it, I mean, if you yard this hard enough, it's going to break, but it's pretty robust for this. So we'll speed through this, but we'll be wiring this up to each of the pins, and then when we get to the other side, I'll slow it down a little bit and show you how to terminate this other end. So I've just soldered all the connectors, the conductors onto each of the terminals. Now, if you're using stranded wire like I am, you do need to just take a look afterwards to make sure that once you're all said and done, you don't have any stray wires hanging out and touching another terminal. I recommend you ohm these out afterwards to make sure that you don't have any of those shorts. But go through and make sure you got some nice solder connections all the way through, and then next step will be to figure out which wire is which going to the other end so we can finish the other connector. So you'll notice here that the strain relief is grabbing some of the outer sheeting of the cable. My shielding is not touching any of the strain relief itself, and then conducting through. So that's nice and clean. And then I just make sure that my resistor is in a position where the back shell can go over top and clear it. But you'll notice here that there is a potential that those could touch. So what I like to do with this is I'll just open this up a bit. I'll wrap a little Kapton tape around this just to make sure that it's isolated, and we'll move on to the next one. So this is the pin out for the Stilo helmet So these are the pin terminal numbers on the connector that goes into the Stilo helmet, and this is the Peltor Intercom, and these are the pins. Okay, now to make sure that our pins are going to the right terminals on the other end. So this is our Stilo connector on this side. One thing that makes life a little bit easier later on is I just take a red marker and I'll put a little bit of red on the tip of the connector. I've just associated red with Stilo for myself. So the pin out is the Stilo connector and the Peltor connector. Pin number 1 goes to terminal 4. Pin 2, which is this first ring, goes to pin 3 on the Peltor. Pin 3 here, which is ring 2, goes to pin 1, and pin 4, the base, goes to 2. So I'll just put my meter into ohms resistance, and I have it toned. So I'll just go one by one, and pin number 1 is going to pin number 4. So I'll just tone that out, and then I put a mark on the wire to what terminal this Peltor is. It makes it a little bit easier for assembly. I've confused it in the past where I was marking what wire was from what terminal. For me, I mark where that is going, so this assembly makes it a little bit easier for me. Now that I've got the connector on, again, I'll make sure that I'm not shorting anything out with the strain relief. Number 1 is going to go to the strain, and that's the first one that I'll do. Is I'll put this into position, and I'll strip this wire back, do this center pin connection first, that's the hardest one, and then I'll work my way around. Okay, so one more check. So this is the Stilo end, and this is the Peltor end. So pin number 1 from the Stilo goes to the base 4. And I'll just go through and make sure that there's no shorts. So pin number 2 is going to pin number 3. And again, I'll just make sure that I'm not getting any shorts. We're good. Pin 3 goes to 1. And there's no shorts. And pin number 4 goes to 2. Which were good. So now I'll move these back shells into position, I'll thread them on, and we'll get into heat shrinking. So now the cable's made, time to finish it up. I'll cut a couple pieces of heat shrink, about 2 inches. That gives a nice little bit of overlap onto the cable itself. As mentioned before, I do have some of this nice heat shrink that's got like a glue inside. This is really great. This heat shrink specifically doesn't have, but that's fine. You can get an adhesive glue. I think I got this at Wire Care when I was quite a while ago. So I'll cut a piece of this off and I'll wrap it inside, and that bonds the heat shrink tubing to the outer sheathing of the wire. And then print off some labels for it, and I've got some clear heat shrink just to put over top afterwards, and it makes a nice clean look. So I made a couple labels, and I'll find my Stilo connector first. I'll slide my heat shrink over top of it, right to the edge. And there we have it. One Stilo helmet to Peltor Intercom cable. Strong, robust, and ready to enjoy the stages.